Hey everybody, just want to do a brief update on my Gourami tank here. It's Sunday evening, and earlier today I shot a video talking about how I needed to get in this tank and give it a haircut, more or less. It's just getting really overgrown, and it was just so dimly lit and dark on the bottom you couldn't see anything. So I did indeed get in there and do a water change. Maybe 20%, 25%, nothing huge. But I got a lot of plant material out of there. I really trimmed back the red tiger lotus that had completely covered the surface on the right side of the tank. And then on the left side of the tank, I had so much of that floating water sprite that it pretty much completely covered the surface on that side of the tank. So one of the other things that I've come to realize when I was in there grooming and, removing copious amounts of plants was I've got a lot of Java fern in here too. This is really dense, thick stuff that is taking up a lot of light in the tank. It really does prevent a lot of the light from getting to the bottom. It's not too bad as long as I keep the overhead fairly clear, but it is still a lot of plant in there. So I keep talking about it, and one of these days I'm going to get in there and sort of modify this tank a little bit. I'm probably not going to rearrange it terribly. It'll still have the very similar feel to it. It just probably will be a little more open, and the caves will be a little bit larger. The trick is going to be moving the rocks around without tearing up the Java fern too much. If it was just attached to a single rock, if each clump was only attached to one rock, I could just move that rock around. But what happens is that I use sort of two rocks to hold it in place, and it grows onto both of those rocks. And some of these have been in there so long now that they've grown across, and 3 or 4 rocks might actually be sort of clumped together with the roots. And that right there is the reason I want to open this tank up and make it a little bit bigger. Is my striped Raphael is getting pretty good size, and it wouldn't hurt to have a little more space for him. So no biggie, I don't have to do it, but it is something I would like to do. Again, it's going to be a matter of getting in here and really not tearing up too much of the roots and stuff. This piece on the end here, this is one big piece of wood. You can see the top of it sticking out in the back there, and it's almost like this sort of 3-angled triangular piece of mapani wood, and you can see the rhizome back there. You could think of it as sort of the main root, and you can see how it runs along the face of that wood and very tightly wraps around it. That's because it's been in there growing across that wood for years. I would have to get in there and physically tear it off of that wood to move it. So fortunately that piece doesn't really have to go anywhere. I could just get in there and trim that one up a little bit. It's getting in here where these rocks actually have 2 or 3 rocks together, where moving that is going to really disturb the roots and sort of have to kind of start over from scratch. And depending on how much the roots get damaged, that might actually impact, the plant itself might go through sort of a shock, and we might see what appears to be a lot of die-off after I do it. So we'll have to see. I'll get around to it one of these days. I can worry about that kind of stuff when we get there. My 3 little ballast sharks are still in here and look like they're doing well, so I'm happy about that. I'm almost considering adding more again, because they kind of probably ought to be in at least a little school of maybe 5. But the 3 seem to be doing okay. They hang out together, they swim around. There's no real stress or predators in this tank, so there's nothing for them to really worry about. So I'm not too concerned about them swimming around in there in a group of 3 instead of 5. I don't think that's going to be much of a big deal. So here's a little bit of a look at some of the stuff I pulled out of there. I know it's a big mess. Half of it missed the bucket and is all over the floor. But the bottom of that bucket is all the water sprite. And then, of course, you can see all the leaves from the red tiger lotus lying there, too. And then this container here is all some of the water sprite that was sort of sticking up out of the water, and it was fresh new growth, and it was the stuff that is going to be least likely to have very much cyanobacteria on it. Of course, it's going to have some. This tank does have cyanobacteria in it, so you have to assume anything that comes out of this tank is going to have some on it. But If you follow my videos, you know I don't stress too much about that kind of stuff. My tanks kind of do whatever and roll with the cyanobacteria. You can see it's not really an issue. I don't have it in the tank to the point where it's causing me problems. But I do have it in this tank. I did remove a little bit of this Java fern up here, and it had green sheets of stuff growing on it. And of course, every time I get into this water sprite, it's always got some dark green sheets growing in the middle of it there. So I know I've got cyanobacteria in here, and therefore it's got to be on the stuff I pulled out. It's just that won't be overly covered with it, so it won't take off when it gets into another tank. So what I'm going to do is go up to my pea puffer tank in the office, and it's got a little bit of floating water sprite in there. It's only a 10-gallon tank. It doesn't need a lot. But what's in there already has green sheets of cyanobacteria growing on it again. So I'm just going to pull that stuff out and throw it away. And then I'll throw in a few pieces of what I just cut out of here, and problem solved. So as I've said many times, I don't really worry about the cyanobacteria. I don't have it causing me any issues. To me, it's no different than just a little bit of, the same thing you'd call algae maintenance or a little bit of tank maintenance, keeping the tanks clean. So no biggie there. And finally, I did want to point out that if you see that little otocinclus right there, I didn't even know I had any otocinclus in this tank. I haven't put any otos in here in years, and I don't recall seeing any in a long time. I always just kind of assumed they either all died off or got eaten or something, but there's at least one still in here. I used to have 6 or 7 of them in here swimming around all over the place. At one point I probably have more than that. It's hard to say. Anyway, that is my update here on a Sunday night on my Gourami tank. You can actually see what's going on in there. Right now, that Moonlight Gourami is the only Gourami that's in this tank. I did have a bunch in here once upon a time. Hopefully real soon I'm going to be adding some pearl gouramis. That's my next goal to get some fish in this tank, is some pearl gouramis, which are absolutely beautiful and will stick with my gourami tank theme. So thanks for watching. Don't forget, this one is my Gourami tank. Make sure you're subscribed. That way you don't miss anything else I got coming up. It's always something. You never know what you're going to get with me. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you real soon on the next one.